Our country's fight for the West Philippine Sea has lost momentum as President Duterte decided to set aside a war in favor of Beijing's promise. We can say that there are two out of several of President's statements that have turned out to be true. First, that he is inutile in protecting the West Philippine Sea, and second, that he simply loves Xi Jinping. Ladies and gentlemen, is it not about time for Filipinos to reject this man and what he represents?
That was former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario hitting what he says is government's failure to assert our claim over the West Philippine Sea 5 years after the arbitral victory at The Hague.
In a stern statement, the United States has asked China to halt its provocative actions in the disputed waters. The world superpower has warned China that an armed attack on the Philippines will trigger a decades-old defense treaty. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Let's start with a throwback to the country's historic legal victory upholding our sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea. That was 5 years ago today.
Security experts say it's not too late for the current government to invoke the arbitral ruling. But with less than a year in office, will we see changes in President Duterte's maritime policies? Mobile journalist Stanley Gahete has the front seat to this big story.
Today, 5 years ago, the Philippines won a landmark legal victory against China at an arbitration tribunal at The Hague. But President Duterte appeared not interested in pursuing. So the people are here in front of the Chinese Cultural Consular Office to remind Beijing about the ruling. These local fisherfolk demand that China abide by the arbitral tribunal ruling and called on the president to fight for the country's interest. Fishermen in Zambales said they want to return to their fishing ground.
Patuloy pa rin naghihirap at hindi nakakapunta doon sa ating mayarapang isdaan sa eskarborasyon sapagkat hanggang sa kasalukuyan ang China pa rin ang umakupa doon sa ating mga bahura sa eskarborasyon.
Before he was elected president in 2016, he promised Zambales fishermen he will ride on a jet ski and bring a Philippine flag in the disputed area. But little has been done. He even dismissed the promise as a joke. For former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario, Duterte failed his people.
Our country's fight for the West Philippine Sea has lost momentum as President Duterte decided to set aside a war in favor of Beijing's promise.
Security experts said it is not too late for the government to invoke the arbitral ruling. 5 years after the landmark decision, the Philippine government must continue to assert its sovereignty and territorial integrity over the West Philippine Sea.
We should never tolerate any illegal incursions in Philippine maritime zones. We must protect our EEZ, or exclusive economic zones, marine resources from the wanton exploitation and destruction by invading Chinese poachers.
In less than a year, Duterte will step down from power, but he also made a promise to invoke the ruling. The question is, will we still hear a stronger statement from him against China? I am Stanley Gahete and we are One News.
5 years after that landmark ruling, how is the maritime security situation in the West Philippine Sea? To discuss, joining us is Attorney J. Batungbakal, Director of the UP Institute for Maritime Affairs and Law of the Sea. Good evening, Attorney Batungbakal.
Hi, good evening, Robbie, and to all our viewers and listeners. Good evening.
Sir, former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario said we've lost momentum. Is that the worst of it, or over the past 5 years have we actually crossed a line that we can no longer go back to?
Well, I think that we have not yet crossed the line, no, but we've come very close given some statements of the president, no, in recent years. No? Very, very close, and that's why we are always worried and always immediately raising a howl whenever he made one of these controversial statements. Fortunately, the tendency of the government to walk back its own statements immediately after it becomes apparent that it's very damaging has been rather regular and frequent. No? But today, I agree with the assessment that we have really lost momentum because there were really many lost opportunities for us to be able to build up an international and unified front vis-a-vis China on the maritime issues, no? Especially within Southeast Asia and the rest of the region.
Okay, now assuming that 1 year from now, when we get to the 2022 elections, we have not yet crossed any such line, what would you suggest the next president do?
Well, the next president needs to continue asserting our rights, no, exercising our rights and jurisdiction over the West Philippine Sea. And that means continuing to explore for petroleum in the West Philippine Sea, continuing to protect our fishermen and encouraging our fishermen to fish in the West Philippine Sea, and also trying all that it can to try to manage the resource activities there, such as fishing, especially illegal and destructive fishing. I would say that that is the very minimum that it should try to achieve, try to stop all this destructive fishing activity that is being undertaken by China and any other foreign power for that matter, any other foreign nation for that matter, that might be taking place in the West Philippine Sea. We must at the very least try to conserve and protect and manage the marine environment in the West Philippine Sea because after all is said and done, it's really the resources there that are the most important. It is our sovereign right, no? The living and non-living resources there pertain to the Philippines, they belong to the Philippines. And so at the very least, we should try all that we can to try to conserve them for future generations.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Attorney J. Batong Bacal, Director of the UP Institute for Maritime Affairs and Law of the Sea. Filipino fishermen operating in coastal areas near the West Philippine Sea are losing income due to China's presence in Scarborough Shoal. Today's big number is 70%. That's the drop in fishermen's income per fishing trip since last year, according to militant fishers group Pamalakaya. From an average income of 1,000 pesos, a small fisherman now only takes home 300 pesos per trip. Fear of harassment by Chinese vessels has stopped fisherfolk from approaching Scarborough Shoal.
These are the other stories tonight. The first city to report a COVID-19 case in the country is also the first to achieve herd immunity. San Juan City has vaccinated 112% of its target population. The health department vouches for Sinovac's efficacy following reports that some 600 fully vaccinated healthcare workers in Thailand still got infected. And the Trade Department is getting backlash over a proposal to standardize how adobo is cooked. But the agency clarified it's meant to promote the dish internationally. These big stories after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. More than 4 months since the country began its COVID-19 vaccination program, San Juan City has already inoculated more than 100% of its target population to achieve herd immunity. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to this story.
It started out as ground zero for the first local transmission of COVID-19 in the Philippines. But now, San Juan City is the first city in the country that has achieved herd immunity by inoculating at least 70% of its population.
Bagamat dito po sa San Juan nagsimula ang first local transmission ng COVID-19 sa Pilipinas, dito rin natin unang tatapusin ang COVID sa San Juan.
Herd immunity simply means stopping the spread of an infection by immunizing at least 70% of a population. For San Juan, that's 88,000 people of its population of 126,000. As of July 11, the city has already immunized 96,610 people, or roughly 112% of its target. But the battle isn't over though. Of the 96,000 immunized, only one-third have gotten their full dose. The other 67,000 have only gotten one dose so far. Still, it's a big step for this small city.
Now, kahit na may magsasabi dyan siguro, maliit na naman ang San Juan, pero to vaccinate 96,610 of the San Juan constituents in only 4 months, roughly, since March. Hindi po biro yan.
Green Hills Shopping Center was where the first case of local transmission of COVID-19 was reported in March 2020. Kay Madarang, a tenant in Green Hills Shopping Center, had to close one of her stores last year.
May dalawa akong stall, pero nung dumating yung pandemic, napilitan akong isara yung shop ko sa Shopsville. Dahil sa, syempre, mataas din yung rent namin, hindi nakakayanin dahil wala na talagang pumapasok.
Like many other businesses, she shifted to online selling, but there were still challenges.
Mahirap pa rin kasi nandito yung daily needs namin, nandito yung daily business namin talaga. Natuto kaming mag-online. Pag tinatanong kami ng client na kung taga saan kami, hindi namin kayang sabihin na taga Green Hills. Kasi once sabihin mong taga Green Hills ka, pag sinabi mong Green Hills, wala na, hindi na bibili yung customer. Para kaming may sakit.
With San Juan hitting herd immunity, authorities expect local businesses to start getting back on its feet.
Sa reopening ng economy, nakikita ho natin na pag bumalik ang tao, ang bilis ho umakyat ng ating negosyo. Bilis bumalik yung benta.
With more and more people getting vaccinated, it means that our lives will slowly go back to normal. Now, it might not be the same as before the pandemic, but for business owners like Madarag, it's enough for a fresh start. I'm Jacob Lazaro and we are One News.
Meanwhile, the DOH is distancing itself from news of San Juan Representative Ronald Zamora allegedly receiving COVID-19 booster shots. DOH spokesperson Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere says they are still waiting for conclusive studies on the safety and efficacy of booster shots before they recommend its use. As for Zamora's Sinopharm boosters, Vergere says it may have been a medical decision between the lawmaker and his doctor.
Hindi kami na-inform about this matter. This was something that they did between the individual and his physician. Gusto lang ho namin magpaalala na again, papaulit-ulitin ko, mixing and matching at saka booster doses ay hindi pa po nairerekomenda sa ngayon ng Department of Health at ng mga eksperto dahil hindi pa ho kumpleto ang ating mga ebidensya.
The DOH, meanwhile, is seeing a flattening in the number of cases, prompting a study on possibly downgrading some high-risk areas to GCQ until the end of the year. The department is also keen on creating an analytics group that can work with the economic team to set parameters on when to tighten or ease restrictions.
Time for our next look at some of the day's big stories. The Health Department insists that Sinovac's COVID vaccine remains effective. The comment comes after over 600 Thailand healthcare workers tested positive after receiving the Chinese jab. On Radyo 5, Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere cited a local FDA data saying that of 1.6 million Sinovac full vaccinees, only 33 suffered mild cases. Vergere also noted that nobody was hospitalized and nobody died. President Rodrigo Duterte received the second dose of Sinopharm tonight. The palace confirmed that the chief executive got the jab before meeting select members of the IATF. Health Secretary Francisco Duque administered the shot. Duterte got his Sinopharm jab, or his first dose of the Sinopharm jab, last May 3 or over 9 weeks. The World Health Organization recommends an interval of 4 weeks between Sinopharm doses. And 12 senators filed a resolution calling for a probe into alleged government-funded troll farms. The move comes on the heels of the PCOO allocating 70 million pesos to 375 contractuals while quickly denying that they spread disinformation and targeted admin critics. Resolution 768 co-author Senator Ping Lacson had claimed in June that an undersecretary is organizing troll farms in a certain province.
San Miguel Corporation has started collecting toll fees at the Skyway Stage Street today, but motorists hoping to evade the heavy EDSA traffic were left disappointed. Gerard de la Peña with this report.
This was EDSA on Monday morning. The bumper-to-bumper traffic at rush hour is reminiscent of its pre-pandemic state. Due to the heavy traffic, some motorists opted to use the Skyway Stage 3, even if San Miguel infrastructure has started charging toll fees today. The fees range from 105 to 264 pesos for Class 1 vehicles. But it was the same slow-moving traffic on the elevated expressway, especially at the Bandia exit. For the toll operators, this is just part of the birth pains.
Expectedly, may mga bottlenecks, lalo-lalo na sa mga toll plazas. Marami talaga yung mga may RFID na dati, kaya lang kulang ng load o walang load, ngayon lang sila nagpapaload.
Some motorists are now thinking twice if paying a huge sum for the expressway is worth it.
Hindi rin namin alam kung ganun pa rin sa kabilis. Kasi kung ngayon, may bayad na malamang magkakaroon na yung toll. Dati kasi dire-diretso lang yan eh.
For the MMDA, the charging of toll fees at the Skyway Stage 3 had limited impact on the movement along EDSA. While acknowledging that vehicular volume on EDSA is already near pre-pandemic level, traffic is still moving.
Kahit na tayong 8% or pre-pandemic volume, hindi naman tayo tumututod eh. Gumagalaw. At yung rush hour natin, talagang limited sa rush hours lang in the morning and in the afternoon. Hindi na tayo yung buong araw puno ang EDSA.
The MMDA said it will start collecting data tomorrow to be able to come up with a more accurate analysis on the impact of charging toll fees at the Skyway Stage 3. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
For the big story in sports, motorsports program Vios Cup is back after its 2020 season was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The first leg of the Vios Cup was held Saturday at the Clark International Speedway, headlined by the brand Toyota Gazoo Racing. Spectators were not allowed at the race venue due to quarantine protocols, but Toyota Motors Communications Manager Elvin Luciano said the opening event was still a huge success. The Vios Cup had two racing events, the Circuit Championship as well as the Autocross Challenge. Motorsports fans can follow updates through the official Facebook pages of Toyota Motor Philippines and Toyota Gazoo Racing PH.
This program is really for our fans and our motorsports enthusiasts. So that's why we have prepared a special show for them so they can join in the action wherever they are.
Time for another quick break. When we return, how do you like your adobo? Would you be willing to change your recipe to follow a prescribed standard on how to cook the dish? And are you okay? If not, when is it okay not to be okay? And when is it not okay to not be okay? Confused yet? Juan Binibini sure had a tough task of answering that question from Tito Boy Abunda, which has now spawned memes left and right. The details after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. the trade industries in hot water after pushing for standardized recipes in cooking Filipino dishes, starting with adobo. But the agency is clarifying adobo lovers will still have it their way, whatever way that is, as its campaign is only for international promotions. Shaila Francisco with the details.
Aside from the usual chicken or pork adobo, some people use liver or intestine meat. There are also those who prefer to put some add-ons, like potatoes, bananas, and eggs. But what can be considered as the best version of the well-loved Filipino dish?
Sa akin yung yung tuyong-tuyong adobo, yung dry siya, tapos may sili yung maanghang.
Siyempre, ito yung pinakamasarap na adobo dahil ang aking partner ay talaga namang may forever sa pagluluto ng adobo.
Because of the varying cooking methods and ingredients, the Trade Department wants to set a national standard. The agency formed a technical committee on other dishes as well, like sinigang and sisig.
But when it comes to local dish, do we really need a standard to identify it as Filipino? For some experts, it's the difference in variations that makes it Filipino. Like this adobo dish, the recipe of which was based in Isabela.
Ang pagkain naman natin is very diverse talaga. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na iisa lang. So, yung strength natin ay nasa diversity. And doon tayo dapat mag-bank.
For the Philippine Culinary Heritage Movement, there are far more important things to prioritize.
Yung mga promised subsidy nila sa restaurants na makakatulong dun sa mga F&B workers, mag-access lang tayo ng fund, time, saka resources.
This echoes most of the sentiments of Filipinos on social media, including Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Others question the need for standardizing adobo while at the same time seeking to abolish board exams. In response to the backlash, the DTI clarified that the standard will not be mandatory.
Hindi po standard ang pinag-uusapan dito. Kung ano lamang yung basic traditional recipe na nag-consultation lamang sa mga chefs para lang may basic traditional recipe na ipopromote pagka-abroad. Baka may umangkin pa nung ating Philippine adobo. So, kailangan nang meron tayong i-promote. At yan po ginagawa ng ibang bansa.
Shaila Francisco, VR 1 News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. 4 out of 10 Filipinos are now willing to get vaccinated against COVID-19. That's according to the latest survey by Pulse Asia. Philippine Star reports that this is higher from the figure last February, where only 16% were willing to get the jab. The survey stated that most residents in Metro Manila and a sizable population in Mindanao, mostly in classes A to C, are willing to get their vaccine shots. The Philippines may likely return to its pre-pandemic growth levels by the third quarter of next year. This is according to estimates by Moody's Analytics. Its senior economist Katrina L. tells Business World Live that the pace puts the Philippines behind regional peers, which are expecting pre-pandemic growth levels this year. Moody's downgraded its growth forecast for the country this year from 4.9% to 5.3% after the surge in COVID-19 cases last April. A viral video of a club party violating health protocols has led to the closure of Siso Gastro Bar in Quezon City. News 5 reports that some of the partygoers present in the video were online influencers. QC's Task Force Disciplina says only resto bars are allowed to operate at this time, and that Siso, in contrast, operates as a regular club.
Virgin founder Richard Branson has become the first billionaire to blast into space, beating fellow billionaires Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. On Sunday, Branson soared more than 50 miles above the New Mexico desert aboard his Virgin Galactic passenger rocket plane in its first fully crewed test flight to space. Branson was among 6 of Virgin Galactic holding employees strapped in for the ride, a milestone for a venture he started 17 years ago. The billionaire touted the mission as a precursor to a new era of space tourism, with the company poised to begin commercial operations next year.
Another big story in sports. In the NBA, the Milwaukee Bucks took Game 3 of the NBA Finals in dominating fashion as they defeated the Phoenix Suns 120-100. The Bucks improved to an NBA best 8-1 at home in the playoffs by beating the Suns, who had been a playoffs best 6-2 on the road. Giannis Antetokounmpo scored 41 points and grabbed 13 rebounds. He joined Shaquille O'Neal and LeBron James as the only NBA Finals players with back-to-back 40-point, 10-rebound performances. Game 4 is set on Thursday.
Model actress Wilma doesn't just got the best gift ever during her birthday. Wilma's non-showbiz boyfriend Garrick Parin got on his knee and asked her to be his wife. But some netizens got clever with wordplay. They quipped the model's name won't change as it's going to be Wilma Doesn't Parin. But that's not the only thing trending over the weekend. Venezuela was talked about on local Twitter after Miss Universe 2018 Capriona Gray committed a blunder while hosting Binibining Pilipinas.
Binibining 7, Meji Cruz from Venezuela.
Hannah Arnold of Masbate took home the crown and will compete for Miss International in Japan this coming November. Batangueña Maureen Montaigne was named Miss Globe. Cinderella o Benita of Cagayan de Oro won Binibining Pilipinas Intercontinental, while Samantha Pandillo of Cavite was Binibining Pilipinas Grand International. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
And one of the pageant's iconic moments was when veteran host Boy Abunda posed a philosophical question to a candidate.
When is it okay not to be okay? And when is it not okay to be not okay?
While Iloilo's Karen Mendoza was able to answer, many netizens were baffled by Tito Boy's now viral question, and so memes ensued. If it were for this user, her answer may just be similar to Miss Manila's trademark response during Miss Universe Philippines, "Kailangan kong huminga." For another user, Miss Iloilo would go Christine Reyes and pull Tito Boy's hair, a reference to their acting challenge in 2019. As for this one, Chris Aquino's reaction in a 2019 interview may just be the perfect answer to that difficult question.
Na-vertigo ako. Ikaw din? Ako din.
Ang hirap naman kasi ng tanong.
May mas mahirap ba akong tanong dyan?
Ano?
Paano magluto ng adobo?
Hindi ako marunong magluto.
Iba-iba ang sagot ng mga tao.
Pero teka lang, kayo ba may standard adobo ba kayo sa bahay?
Wala, iba-iba. May tuyo, may ano. Pero sa amin kasi, dalawa kinalakihan namin. Nanay ko kasi Batangueña. Taga San Jose, Batangas ang nanay ko. So yung meron kami yung adobong itim, yung usual na alam ng mga tao, yung may suka tapos toyo. Pero ang kinalakihan talaga namin, ang paborito ko talaga, yung adobong pula. Walang toyo yun, atsuete yung ilalagay mo.
Ako naman, yung paborito kong adobo, yung may karne. Kahit anong karne.
So adobong kangkong, di ba sa'yo?
Ay, nako, walang katapusan ng usapan na yan. Buti na lang, hindi tinanong yan ni Boy Abunda. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News, for more in-depth analysis. Visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
At ako naman si Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.